This is the CreaseCast.
We're here to talk about the season finally being over. Your Colorado Avalanche are champions once again. 21-year drought is over. Cale Makar wins the Conn Smythe literally like a day after winning the Norris.
And
pretty good.
And playing through that whole game, like you noticed it before I did, where you there was the shot of him and I think what did you saw it during I think the second period,
it was
the first intermission?
I think it was after the second intermission or the first, and they were just showing everyone in the locker, and Makar was just kind of leaning into his stall, but his gloves were off. So you could see his left arm was just covered in one of those support brace things. He had tape everywhere, and I was like, oh, maybe that's why he hasn't scored a goal yet this series. Still didn't matter because the guy was, unreal, but crazy series. Loved how competitive that final game was. I was thinking about this today. I was like, I don't like series ending in game 6 because it feels kind of anticlimactic. Like it was always going to happen that way. There's just something satisfying about a game 7 decider. It just feels so definitive. All the chips are on the table. Everything's riding on every play. And then this one was just kind of well, Tampa got to the lead, but Colorado was completely in control despite the fact that they had a lead. It was just an inevitability. It was that villain from Marvel, Iron Man.
Thanos. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Thanos, that guy.
Steven Thanos. Yeah.
That's true. So yeah, it was the big takeaway for me though was just how funny it was to see Corey Perry lose his third Stanley Cup final in a row.
Yeah, look, I feel bad on a human level. I'm that that kind of that does suck. That's got to be there was particularly there was the shot the broadcast caught the shot of his
wife
and
kid
holding his kid, holding their child and bawling her, and the wife was bawling her, his wife was bawling her eyes out. And in that moment I was oh god, that's gotta be miserable. Not in the sense of obviously, it's getting to live in the life of as being in an NHL family has a lot of perks to it, but there's got to be something so tough about, especially as the partner in this case of the significant other of literally literally flying across different parts of the country every single year to a new city and having to make new friends, new connections, find a new house, all of those things. Doing one of those being during a pandemic where she couldn't even see her husband for long stretches of time during their playoff run. And for him to come out every single time on the short end of the stick, that's gotta be so tough. But at the same time, it's Corey Perry, so nobody cared. So everyone thought it was hilarious.
Yeah, hang on. Did he lose in 6 games every single time?
He lost
Dallas
in
was
5
6
with Montreal.
Oh yeah, 5 was Montreal. Okay, well,
yeah, which is and that series was one of those at least in that series it was a case of well, they never stood a chance. You were
they were happy to be there.
They were just happy to be there. You can kind of chalk that one up to there are more good memories here than bad ones because of how unlikely that was.
What we overcame to get here or whatever.
This year he was playing on the back-to-back champions who had beaten him the first 2 times, and then they still lost. And then somebody pointed out the picture of him literally being on the ice in the final 10 seconds as Kemper's throwing his gear, and you just see Perry skating by the face-off dot. You're oh no.
A part of me wonders too, if you're Corey Perry, obviously he had free reign to sign wherever he wanted, and apparently Julien Brisebois actually wanted Corey Perry for them before their 2021 run, I think he said, but the money didn't work out or something, so that's why they signed him to a 2-year deal for this one. And so part of me is if you're Corey Perry, wouldn't you be the odds of a team three-peating are so low that by just signing there, you're almost guaranteeing that it's not going to happen.
A little, I mean, yeah, a little bit. Like it's because again, like we've talked about it many times in the last couple weeks, particularly because of like how in the early parts of this series in particular, the Avalanche were clearly like outpacing the Lightning at every turn.
Mhm.
Like it was a case of like you were looking at them, and you're like, okay, well, they're looking like a team that's played over 200 hockey games in the
Yeah.
last like 2.5 years, if
Mhm.
like that. Like it's so taxing on your body. Like, and then and like that's not even clear. Like, then there's some guys like Pat Maroon who literally played in 4 straight. Like
Yeah.
he had a whole
He
other 7 game series playoff run with the Blues before joining Tampa. So
Mhm.
like, yeah, like the amount of toll that takes on your body is so difficult. And like, I'll give credit to the Lightning in game 6 in particular. Like in the early parts of that game, they were controlling the pace of play. Like
Yeah.
they actually, and it was very like, it clearly ended up being a case of like they put every last ounce into the of gas in the tank left into like that first period and a half, and then
Mhm.
they just ran out. They just ran out of steam. But like yeah, like that, the amount of work that it takes to get there is so taxing as a group, that like, yeah, if you're Corey Perry, like there is a little bit of like oh god, like yeah, they've won 2 in a row, but what are the odds that they can keep up that pace again? Like that's
Yeah.
eventually you're gonna run out of steam. But like, I mean, god, like the Lightning are so good, they still got it to a 6th game where I'm like,
And
they
it was
it wasn't a
close. Like,
bad bet. Like it wasn't a bad
yeah.
bet.
It wasn't like a complete blowout like you're saying. They clearly like emptied the tank to try and get that lead. They'd been struggling the entire time with the Colorado Avalanche's second period gear because they just become like a complete force at that point. And there's like a foot speed issue. Like the long change in the second period for any team is usually rough. It's even rougher when you're the Tampa Bay Lightning, like you said, who are, on their third consecutive cup finals. That's a lot of hockey. That's a lot of exhaustion on the legs. And when you just burnt the tank to get a lead, like to then be like, oh, you need the second period to shut down this absolute monster. And then they lose Anthony Cirelli for like a considerable amount of time to an injury. Like it's basically all these things not shaking out in their favor. You can see all these calls go like some terrible calls not being made on both teams. And then the ones that do get made, they just started losing their composure because you could tell they were just kind of like we need everything to shake right. And these calls going against us, like, is not going to play into us having a good chance here, which is weird because their PK was fine all
Yeah.
game. Like
Yeah.
they were really good. It was just like they clearly were riding a wave of momentum after the first period and they couldn't maintain it in the second. And Colorado took over. Bowen Byram especially like led the team with 5v5 minutes, like as a 20-year-old or whatever. Like good shout out to him and Vancouver Giants connection. That rules.
Yeah. I
Um,
I posted on my Instagram story like a picture from like one of the last, I actually the last Giants game I covered before the world shut down, which was when the Calgary Hitmen came to town with Jet Wu and Carson Folk playing on that
mhm.
Hitmen team. And like I posted like the throwback video of like Byram after like an game ending fight, right? And he's like
Yeah.
pumping up the crowd kind of thing. And it was like, wow, like looking back on that, like 2 years late, only 2 years later, he's a Stanley Cup champion. And not only was
Yeah.
he wasn't just like riding along for the ride, he was
Like
very much a
instrumental.
huge, crucial part, especially in the late parts of that series when, like we mentioned, Makar was clearly playing injured. Josh Manson was not looking particularly as strong as he had in other parts of the playoffs. Like there were
Mm,
like Sam Girard had been out since the Blues series. Like they needed Byram to step up and play that role for them to do as well defensively as they did, and he stepped right up to the plate. Like
yeah.
it's again, we're talking about a guy who at one point this season we were legitimately concerned might never play again because of concussion issues. And like
Yeah.
and so for him, like talk about like a feel good story. Like it's incredible to see him have that kind of impact on the Avalanche and win the cup in that fashion. But also just from like the human standpoint of like, it's been really cool. Like I haven't had a lot of guys like where I've been like, I've seen them play from like junior up to now. It's so cool seeing him go from like being like the Giants, like superstar player to, and within 2 years to being a champion and getting to hoist the cup. Like that's incredible.
Yeah, I'm looking at their chart, the chart right now on like Wikipedia or whatever for the age or whatever. It is actually like insane how young like the key contributors are on the Avs. Like
Oh my God. Like
like all the
let's
people
talk
that are
about the
leaving right
yeah.
now. Like so all the UFAs or whatever. Like remember we were talking in the last round about how the team might lose. Like if they don't if they don't win a cup right now, they might be screwed because they can't retain like half of these guys. Now they don't have to worry
Right.
about that at all, and they've got their core like completely locked in. Like they're gonna lose, like you said, Josh Manson, Nazem Kadri, Kemper, Eric Johnson, I think, Cogliano, Helm, and Jack Johnson. Basically, a bunch of dudes over 30 that, while they played a good role with Colorado in their cup win, aren't essential moving forward. Like those are guys you can replace for cheap if you can find the right people. Like they're set, man. And I think we have in our little question thing about whether or not we think the Lightning lose their dynasty or do they still keep it? And I'm going to ask you, do you believe Colorado can repeat next year?
Ooh, I think I think it depends like you meant like how much of this roster comes back. Like here's the thing. I think I could very realistically see them going in more of a like a not I think that I guess the best comparable would be like the Blackhawks where they didn't win all their cups within like in like 3 years in a row. They were
Mm-hmm.
like spaced out over like 5 years.
Yeah.
I can see the Avalanche being in a situation where if they retain enough of these guys, like, I mean, okay, Nazem Kadri, I mean, God, you might have to keep him. You might have to keep him regardless of how much he costs. Like that, like again, talk about a guy who deserved that Stanley Cup, and we'll talk about him a bit later in his post-game interview, which is hilarious and
Mm-hmm.
absolutely fantastic. But like, I mean, there are some guys here where it's like, yeah, you probably move on from like Andrew Cogliano, Darren Helm. Like those guys aren't coming back. They're in their mid to late 30s.
Yeah,
Like, yeah, like
you probably move on from all of them, and you just try and replenish what they brought to the table, like for even cheaper, so that you can maybe re-sign Val Nichushkin or Kadri on like a team friendly deal.
yeah.
Like
But
I tweeted it last night. Like Joe Sakic now has the ability and the leverage to go to all of these UFAs and be like, "Hey, do you want to try and repeat what we just accomplished here? Because if you take a team discount, we can do that."
yeah, and this isn't like and in a different sort of scenario than Tampa, where like both teams built championships in like long rebuild fashion, but they've taken kind of different directions. Where like Tampa has definitely built themselves around like bringing in a lot of guys on like with some term to try and win in that very set window. Whereas Colorado is in this spot now, like you said, they have enough cap like uh freedom that they can go to a lot of guys and be like, hey, if you want willing to take a team friendly like 1-2 year deal with us, you can be a part of something special here, and you can get some really good players to come in and play with Nathan McKinnon, with Gabriel Landeskog, with Mikko Rantanen,
Yeah.
and like God, so many great players like Kale McCarr, like the
Well,
list goes on, right? You can get
all he
really
has to
good.
do is be like, look what I did with 12 million in cap space to get you guys into a championship caliber team.
Yeah,
Now if I have 26 million, like what do you think I can do? Like Tampa Bay, their whole thing was, we're going to try and set up established windows. So we're going to sign these guys to 2-year deals so that we get one shot and a second shot after. And if it works out, then great. If not, then oh well, we still have the year after.
yeah.
Colorado has entered that window where they've got most of their key guys on an additional 2 to 3 years. With I think McKinnon's the only one expiring over the next few years, but
Yeah.
They can easily go now and say we've got Makar, Taves, and Landeskog locked up long term. We can clearly win a cup without a good goaltender. So all we need to do is find guys that we can bring in for cheap 2 to 3 year deals and just keep the window going.
Yeah. Like not to okay. On the Darcy Kemper thing, like, look, hey, he's a
You don't have
Stanley
to
Cup
defend him. He
champion now.
sucked. It's all right.
Yeah,
He
well,
was terrible.
he was not great. He was not great.
You
Pavel
saw that
Francouz
goal he
was not
let
bad.
in? Ooh.
Yeah. That one goal he let in game 6 was not great. Was not fantastic. But like, and here's the thing, like, you don't need I'm not going to sit here and say like you need elite goaltending to win a championship, because I don't think that's necessarily true. You just need
No,
to
he
have
needs
capable.
serviceable. Yeah.
Yeah, it just needs to be capable. Like, having elite goaltending can get you a lot farther. At example, Andrei Vasilevsky. Like,
If it's a luxury, it's great. Like if you
yeah,
have a team like obviously for Tampa, it's like they don't depend on Vasilevsky to get where they are. They conveniently have a very well built team, and Vasilevsky's just icing on the cake where you have like this unbelievable goaltender, but he isn't the sole reason why they're doing it. Whereas Colorado's like, our defense is so mobile and able to move the puck around the ice, and our team is super fast that it doesn't really matter how average our goaltending is, because our team is committed to playing defense and moving the puck as fast as possible, so we're not in our zone. And I mean, that's why it's kind of like, okay, well, what are the Canucks then? Because you can't keep relying on, well, Demko will bail us out. He'll give us 45 saves, and that's our game plan. That's why it was such a relief to yourself and myself when Jim Rutherford came in and was like, yeah, we can't just rely on a goalie all the time. Like, that's not how a team should operate. And it was a relief to hear it then. It's a relief to see it in practice too, in the playoffs, where Darcy Kemper can have the worst stats of all goalies that played more than 10 games, and it didn't matter. Like, that's great. Like, that's good. And then, like, I mean, I know you're a big Demko guy, so hopefully this doesn't lead to them realizing like we should sell high on Demko and get what we can.
Well, hold on here.
If we're doing the copycat model, if you're an NHL GM and you're like, okay, I'm going to replicate what the last cup winner did, you're probably looking at your team and going, does Demko actually help us or impede our ability to build a contender 2 to 3 years down the road?
Well, I will say that just like for context, right? Darcy Kemper's cap hit last year was 4.5 million AAV. Demko's is 5. Like, it's a 500K difference, right? For the next 4 years. So it's not even like a case of where, he's taking up too much cap space and it's costing us dearly, right? It's a case like the Canucks have one of the like most insane like steals of great.
They have a sweetheart deal on that goalie, which is why it's almost a shame that it is such a good contract. Like, you almost hope it was like bad, because then you could just complain about everything with the team, which is what we love to do if you listen to this show. But like, because it's such a good deal, it just makes you mad that everything else isn't a good deal.
Yeah,
or dumb, like Elias Pettersson's bridge, right? Like, it's just doomed to fail the second they sign it.
Yeah, I've said it before. I'll say it again. Like, Jim Benning, the only thing he seemed to know how to do was manage goalies. Like, that was the one thing he seemed to be decent at.
Which is
wild.
A shame. Which is a shame, because we've talked about on this show the best aspect of Benning's tenure was getting like elite goaltending out of whoever the hell it was at a time when he absolutely did not have any reason to have elite goaltending.
Yeah, like Ryan Miller was awesome in all the years he was here for a team that
they didn't need him to be elite.
Like, like, and it's like, it's not his fault. He's awesome, but like, it's just one of those things where it's like, it's so funny just looking back on that on Benning's tenure, where it's like he could not, like, if we're looking at it in like baseball terms, he could not like stop striking out on every single like skater he signed, but somehow just was socking dingers every
Yeah.
single time with the goalies.
Like he could nail the curve, but like just fast pitch, like he just swing and a miss every single time.
Yeah, like 100%. Like it's so like all the contract was always team friendly. It was
Yeah.
always the goalie always like just stole the show. Like
Yeah. And even then, like
ridiculous.
when he
The backups
inherited,
did fine. Like
well, I was gonna say, like even when he inherited Eddie Lack, and it was like Eddie Lack came in relief
Yeah.
for Ryan Miller and still drove them to the playoffs when he had no right to.
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
just
And then he smartly, like, as much as I loved Eddie, he smartly moved on from him at the right time when his ceiling was at the highest, and then and kept Miller, which was the right choice. Like
Mhm.
just in like, yeah, like again, so weird. And yeah, with like the way the Canucks are set up in goal right now, they're set up for if they can build the window in time, which like look, Demko's
Yeah.
got 4 years to go. There's
Mhm.
totally time to get to at least a competitive spot,
in
like a cup
theory,
competitive.
in theory, within 4 years, they should be at least getting to playoffs. If in 2 years they're still like figuring it out, like trying to like clear their cap and their books, like then it's kind of like we're entering
Yeah.
doom and gloom scenario.
Yeah, they
Like
should
it's
be
never gonna
regular.
happen.
Yeah, by the time Demko is on his last contract, they should at the very least, in my opinion, be like fighting for a division title. Like they should be in that
Yeah.
conversation. Like if they're not, they're doing something wrong. Like
Though
that's the
it
yeah.
is a bit concerning too when you look at just like how easily Colorado ran through the Western Conference in the playoffs, and you're like they would have been like had they had achieved the impossible and gotten into playoffs as the second wild card, they would have been Nashville. And Nashville got steamrolled. Like
Yeah.
and there's only so far they can go to not or to be slightly better than Nashville.
Yeah. Like
But
yeah.
they're still gonna get steamrolled.
Yeah, they were still going to get steamrolled either way. Like the Avalanche were just again, like they were. It didn't feel like a team of destiny for say with Colorado because of like how many times like they're not necessarily a team. They're one of the rare teams in the last little while here where it's like when they lost, it wasn't because they like say choked away a golden opportunity, more or less. Like it was always like just the like rotten luck hitting them at just the worst possible time. If you know
Pretty
what I'm
much.
saying, like it was never for a lack of try. And whereas like compared to like other teams, and like for them this year, like seeing the writing on the wall where it was like, oh, this team's gonna win the cup this year. Like as soon as like once they passed the second round hurdle against the Blues, it was like, okay, there's nobody stopping them. Like there's nobody who's gonna be able to come through and stop them.
Yeah, because the only competition they really had in the Western bracket was St. Louis if Binnington was good, and he was fine, but the St. Louis Blues just like collapsed, or Calgary if Jacob Markstrom was Jacob Markstrom. Unfortunately, he completely fell off a cliff,
He completely
and they had no competition at all. It was just the easiest route to a finals probably ever, and not that they were bad, but just how dominant and easy it was for them to destroy everyone in their
It
path.
didn't, and like they destroyed everybody, but it didn't even necessarily like come easy for them because they lost a lot of guys to key injuries and stuff like that too. Like it was not like it wasn't a clean run for them. Like they're like either right, like McCarr.
Yeah, they were missing Kadri for
Kadri.
most of it. They didn't even have Sam Girard during the finals.
No,
or like
one
any
game.
of the Blues series. Like that's the scary thing where it's like, okay, the if you're a Canucks fan, you're like, okay, what do they need to at least match Colorado? It's like, okay, well, Colorado just had one of the most dominant Stanley Cup runs of all time, and they did it without like their number one defenseman or their second best.
Number two, yeah, Cale Makar, 100%, yeah,
Cale Makar. You know what I mean?
Yes.
The number one on the left side or whatever, because I think
Right.
Sam Girard is probably better than Devon Taves personally. But
God, Devon Taves they got for 2 picks. Just ridiculous team building from Joe Sakic.
I forgot to put that in the notes. The Lou Lamoriello experiment strikes again. He's apparently after Josh Anderson from Montreal.
Oh
for
yeah,
some reason.
Yeah, because he's under the impression that they're gonna be back to the conference finals again next year. I guess I don't know. Like,
You
no.
know why? Because Josh Anderson has a no trade clause and makes $5.5 million per year, and that fits the mold of how he wants every forward on his team to be
Yep.
making $5 million or more and have no
Yep.
trade protection.
Yep. And to have no facial hair as well.
Yeah, they got to trim their sideburns because it's
Yeah. Mattingly.
disrespectful.
Yeah, exactly. Which, and like we can, that's a whole other thing where it's like, God, I don't even know necessarily like from in Montreal's case, like I mean, obviously if they're giving you the 13th overall pick, that's worth it to you in some fashion. But also in
Mhm.
Montreal's case, like it's one of those things where it's like, okay, you were as bad as you were last year. Like that in itself was almost just like the worst possible like luck all coming to like haunt you at once. You're not going to be that bad again next year. You'll be at least
Ha-
a little bit better. Like, so I'm like, I don't
How
really
much
know
do
if
you
you
want
can
to
trade Josh
bet?
Anderson.
How much do you want to bet he's going to trade Matthew Barzal for Josh Anderson 1-for-1 because
Oh
Lou
my
Lamoriello's an
God.
idiot?
Well, I mean, he already fired the coach for Matt Barzell, but
Yeah.
yeah, which like I mean, on it may be like it's one of those. No, you gotta take no Matt Barzell. This is a team. You gotta take $5 million. What you're not you're you gotta be like Ken Danico. Like
You know what's wild? They have $12 million in cap space, and they only have 3 defensemen signed through next year.
oh whoops, bye bye. Like
Classic whoops.
Kiefer Bellows come on down. No, he's a forward. Or is he a defenseman? I might be
No, he's
wrong.
a forward. Yeah,
He's a forward. Okay. Yeah, like God, they don't have a lot of like
they
I
got
think prospects coming
nothing
through the
coming
mix
either.
because they
No.
traded them all for Kyle Palmieri. Like yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
like yeah, and like yeah, compare what Lou Lamoriello is doing on the island over to like yeah, like the Avalanche and everything. Like again, like the Canucks like everyone was talking yesterday about like okay, every time a team wins the cup, everyone else tries to go out and replicate them or to
Mm-hmm.
some degree. If the Canucks take anything from the Avalanche winning the cup, I hope they take into account, and knowing what I know about Jim Rutherford's tenure, like history, they probably
Mm-hmm.
will, is that you have to be quick on the puck. You have to be able to beat other teams to puck battles and races and those sorts of things. You have to have the acceleration, the speed, the overall like stamina to be able to play a full 60 minutes at a high octane pace
Yeah.
because the Canucks have pieces here that if they went all in on playing a fast quick game, they could do it. They've
Mm-hmm.
just spent so much time signing guys to be the meat and potatoes and the slow dudes that it has like not worked, and they've had to do the thing where they sit back on their lead and just like let the other team pelt them with shots forever.
Mm-hmm.
And like I just look at Colorado as a team of like God, there is like Joe Sakic worked miracles on that team. Like remember like it was only like 5 years ago they were the worst team in the league. They had an absolutely awful season. And they trade Matt Duchene. They don't panic trade Matt Duchene being the
No.
key thing there. They wait for the perfect deal to come up. They absolutely get Sam Girard and Bowen Byram out of it. Like just a
Yeah.
clean sweep. And
Just
then
completely bet that
yeah,
the Ottawa Senators were going to be like a dumpster fire by the
yeah,
time they get that top 5 or top 10 pick. It's unprotected, and they end up with Bowen Byram off of it. Like,
yeah. Then
goddamn.
and even when they finished dead last and didn't win the lottery, they still I believe or like around there, I think they still ended up with Cale Makar. That was Cale Makar's pick. Like, because they ended up with the 4th pick, and then Pedersen came right after.
Yeah.
Like, that's insane. Like, that's incredible that in a draft where you still lost, where you were as bad as you were, had the bona fide odds to finish first overall, you still
You
ended up
drop
with
4 or yeah, you drop 4
all
spots and
3
still get the best player in
spots
the draft.
and still got the best player in the draft. Like
Yeah.
exceptional work by those guys. And like, guys like Nazem Kadri, buying on a guy like Nazem Kadri who had his stock depleted in Toronto because of those two
For
different
dumbass
suspensions against
reasons.
the Bruins. And like, to be fair, like, Yeah, it was a kind of a thing where it was like, oh, clearly he had to age up a little bit. He had to take a little bit
Mhm.
of time to kind of mature as a player. And that it took a trade to kind of do that for him. But God, look at how he went this year. Like, he was incredible. He was so crucial to them winning that championship. And then to have him, like, yesterday when he's like, he makes that that incredible quote where he's like, to all the people who said I was a liability in the playoffs, they could kiss my ass.
Honestly, like I usually don't tune into like the post game like speech or interviews with like players, because usually it's like just the dumb shit every time. Like, oh, you dream about this moment, as your little kid, you always want to be here. It's like usually just like, who cares? The boilerplate stuff, and then you get his where he tells everyone to kiss his ass for writing him off. Like, that
Yeah.
rules. Good
Yeah,
for him.
you can't help but love and want to root for Nazem Kadri. And like that's
Yeah.
difficult for a player who has like the on ice reputation he's had, like to kind
Mhm.
of revitalize it in that way. But he earned it. He has earned it in spades, and it's like it was truly amazing to see him lift the cup and as like the first Muslim born or Muslim NHLer to win a Stanley Cup. Like, that's incredible. Like, that's a
Yeah, that rules.
fantastic moment for hockey. And yeah, like, and I mean, it's incredible that we've spent this long on the Avalanche and have barely mentioned Nathan MacKinnon, who showed up with a crucial goal at
Yeah, he's
just
all
the
right.
perfect time. Yeah, he's all
He's
right.
pretty
Like,
good.
Cole Harburg, man, like they have something in the water that just makes great hockey players, like,
Lead.
ridiculous. Yeah, it's lead. That's why all the Flint kids are really good at hockey. Oh, jeez.
Oh.
Oh, haha. But yeah, it's yeah, Colorado winning, they earned it in all of the right ways. They built the right way, they won the right way. It's incredible. And like, you know what? And like, even like, kudos to the Lightning in the sense of like, yeah, they got on everybody's nerves by the end, whining about every single play every 10
Mhm.
minutes. Yeah, they're a team that plays super dirty hockey and
Well, they
and like
don't. They didn't
they
always. They did this playoffs, but I think
they
that was
did
kind of like
last year
a.
too. Like, they've
No, they
always been
didn't.
no, they've we talked about it, I think, last year when the Tim Peel thing came out, right? Where like the Lightning have always been designed as a team that takes a bunch of penalties, but because of game management, they know they'll eventually get those penalties back
The makeup
again.
calls or whatever, but like that's.
The makeup calls, and they will just ruin you on the power play because they're so lethally good as well.
I would
On
say
those
that doesn't
kind of
make
things.
them dirty though. That's just like gaming the system.
It's
And
gaming the
like
system, but
this year
like
was clearly like they were trying to game the system that way, but like the refs were kind of like, I don't say they're onto it, because I don't ever want to credit them with being like smart or
knowing what
intelligent.
they're doing, God no.
Yeah, like, because some of those calls, like even the ones they did, like those. Okay, so it was a bit like obnoxious seeing them whine over every call, but some of those icing calls, like legitimately, they had a reason to like throw their stick at the ref.
Oh,
Because like
100%.
the first one with like 2 minutes and 30 seconds left, he's already crossed the hash marks. The puck is already at the red line, and he waits for the player to skate onto it before he says no icing. And
Yeah,
then
that's
to do that again when there is 35 seconds left, like like obviously
they handed it.
I don't want to say they cost them the game, because at the end of the day, it was a 1-goal game against like a really good opponent, and they had only registered 4 shots on goal at that point of the period. But when you deny a team as good as Tampa an offensive zone faceoff with 20 something seconds left in the game, you very well could have cost them a game tying goal and prolonging the series. And it almost seemed out of spite, because he literally waited for him to touch the puck after already crossing the lines to then say no. Like,
Yeah.
he stopped skating once he touched the puck because he knew it was going to be icing, and then he said no. It was crazy. It was a terrible call.
It was it was yeah, like, for a group that loves to be like, "Oh, we're not gonna call anything because we don't wanna influence the game." They sure
Yeah,
love
yeah.
to influence the game with other calls.
Indeed.
And like, okay, like, to be, like, a little bit fair, I do think that there were, like, I think there was one icing in particular where, like, that the Lightning did get in that, like, span at the end of the game with the empty net, where you could clearly see Hedman was doing the fake, oh, I'm going so hard for the puck right now thing. But at the same time, it's still like, well, the second one was still icing. You still have to call the ones that are actually icing. Like,
I definitely
very
thought
dumb.
like too, like, yeah, they must be like just like, all right, we know you're dogging it, but then it was like they showed Hedman's like shift chart at the end, and it was like he'd been on the ice for like 2 minutes and 44 seconds. So you're like,
yeah, right.
surely the refs realize when the guy's been on the ice forever, and they factor that when they're calling icing. But yeah, earlier in like the first period or whatever, there was like a Sergachev one where he clearly like dogged it, like like getting back to the puck, and they did call that one icing, and he was like, "What do you mean?" It's like, well, come on, that one was pretty obvious.
Yeah, it's a bit of an art, like to do the whole thing where like the fake, oh, I'm working so hard to get back for this icing, but it's too far away. Like it's kind of a cool little, it's kind of
it's
a
like
hilarious
an acting
like
thing, you know?
Yeah, it really is. And but like there was like the reffing was the thing with the one thing with the refs is that like I know people were like, especially in like game 5 in particular, people were like, oh, the refs are just trying to hand this to Tampa, and it sure did like at points look like they were
at first
just
it did
gifting it to the Lightning, but no,
yeah,
they're
at
just
first it
bad.
definitely did, especially when the non-boarding call on McDonough, where it was like just 2 minutes when it should have been a major.
Oh god,
And it was kind of like on one hand, you can't go from one half of the period where you're like, okay, the refs are trying to help Tampa even the series, and then like seconds later, it's like you missed the most egregious and obvious call of the game to that point.
Yeah,
It's like what are you doing?
Like they still called a penalty, but somehow it
wasn't the right one.
incredibly stupid. Yeah, like he should have been okay. So like for anyone who didn't see the McDonough hit, like it was
bad.
blatantly like it was literally textbook guy. I forget exactly which Avalanche player it was. I want to say it was
it Logan O'Connor?
I think it was Logan O'Connor. Logan O'Connor standing a couple feet away from the boards, exactly in that spot where they say it's the most dangerous to hit a guy from behind. McDonough skates right in, cross-checks him hard, head first into the boards.
Drives him head first into the boards. It wasn't even like close. It wasn't even justifiable. Puck wasn't on his stick at all. Just like straight up intent to injure.
Yeah, straight up intent to injure, easy suspension. And frankly, the fact I don't care that the season's over. The Department of Player Safety should 100% be suspending him right now for that hit to start next year, like because that was ridiculous. And then and then after they call it, Steven Stamkos is pissed about it and shoots the puck at the ref. And they don't call that either. Like, it's just like, what are you like? What's the point of having you here if you're not going to do anything? Like, there was that. There was the whole like Josh Manson clearly got away with what should have been a tripping penalty, and then the Avalanche score, and then Pat Maroon tries to like hatchet Manson's
literally tried to cut his leg off with a stick.
Literally doesn't call that either, or like or like they called it 4-on-4 or some stupid like that.
Yeah.
Like it was just dumb.
Like
dumb choice.
Like you were saying, right?
Gotta go.
Like through trying to not influence the game, they are in turn completely influencing the game to a bad degree.
Yeah, I don't know why that's such hard logic for them to grasp, but like non-action is still an action. I don't know why that's so hard for them to understand.
Yeah, like I genuinely wonder if they like look at the games or review them afterwards and they just go like, oh yeah, missed that. Oh, we called that one kind of right, but it's, debatable. Oh yeah, definitely missed that. That should have been a major, but couldn't do it because of X reasons. Like the Tim Peel thing just kind of told everyone like, yeah, there's so much game management going on no matter what. Like,
it's the saying the quiet part out loud thing. Like it was, and and they were like, well, but then the NHL did the whole thing where they're like, well, we got rid of that one bad apple, guys. We did it. We saved the game. We've saved the sport. Like, and it's like, no, that's not how this works. Oh God. Like the NHL reffing, and we'll have time to talk about this in the off season when when there's not so much news to talk about, but like NHL refereeing just needs full sweeping reform. They'll never do it, but Yeah.
They basically need to go to the NBA model where the refs are made available for media and they get to review calls,
Yes.
because
Thank you.
there's just no accountability at this point. And the
Yeah.
funny thing is, like all things considered, game 6, like the reffing was bad, but I don't think it was the worst ref game of the
No.
playoffs. That
No.
like that's how like just bad it's been in general.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I think they missed some calls that probably influenced the game to like a serious degree with those like late icings. But like there was like straight up like, I know in game 3 there was like a miss hook. Like you can go to the Toronto series too with like the interference calls too, like the called back goals. It's just like,
Yeah.
like
The
what are they even doing at this point? Like it's
yeah.
just, you guys are influencing the game.
Yeah. I will say the Toronto series, the Toronto Tampa series in overall, though, they did that was like they literally showed that they can call all the penalties in a playoff game and not
Mhm.
like worry about that. Cause that was literally a whole talking point where
Yeah, it's like
that
too many
series
penalties.
was the like the testing ground for that because a bunch of players, like a bunch of major players, like Connor McDavid was one of them. I think Boston Matthews was another, where they literally were like, "Hey, can you please call the penalties as they are
Yeah.
and not just change the rules the second we get to the playoffs?" And I think they were using specifically Toronto, Tampa as the testing ground for that. And
Mhm.
honestly, like I didn't care that there were a bunch more penalties. It was way better that they were calling everything.
Yeah, it
And
felt like they were calling the game as it should be, which is like more important than just calling what you think is most obvious.
yeah, like
I'd rather they call it all and you get like, 14 minutes a night of 4 on 4 than they miss something because they feel like they're influencing it too much by calling it.
yeah,
It makes it
especially
like,
yeah, especially because the players will adapt as they go. So it'll be a case where it's like, yeah, the first little while of them calling them that way, there will be a lot of penalties. But the longer they go and the more the players get used to, oh, this is the bar now that we can't cross, the less penalties will get called because teams will just be playing a cleaner game overall. So it's like that's the whole thing. Yeah, some teams will be like, well, we'll just find a sneakier way to play dirty hockey. But like
mhm,
overall, the odds on you just getting teams to play way cleaner hockey by calling everything as they are, it will even out. It'll all come out in the wash eventually. It just means you have to stick with it when in the early going there will be a lot of games where it's like, yeah, they're calling 10, 12 penalties in this game and
yeah,
it's a little bit
it's a bit
much.
it's a bit much, but at least it seems slightly accurate, which is sometimes
Yeah,
all you need. All right,
all
do
you
we
need.
want to get into the
The
Canucks
Hall
news, or do you want to go to the
yes.
Hall? What do you want to do first?
Let's do the Hall because that's way
Okay,
and so many like honestly that's I don't know about you, but to me that's way more important.
fair.
Like that's way more important. So I'm wearing for anyone watching the YouTube video right now, I have pulled out of my closet a shirt I haven't worn in a very long time. It is my Vancouver Millionaires shirt
Oh
from
yeah,
2014. And if you look on the back there, it's got Roberto Luongo. It's got Roberto Luongo on it.
a
I've
jersey, if you will.
a jersey. Yes, it is. I stopped wearing it because obviously this shirt came out the year he got traded to Florida. And I was
Rip.
like, well, they're gonna stop printing these. So I retired them all just for when I might want them again. Oh God. And like today was such a big day for for that era of the Vancouver Canucks, because like the Canucks don't have a lot of Hall of Fame guys in the guys in the Hall of Fame. Like there's Bure, there's some there, and I think Bure is really the only one that's in there predominantly for what he did as a Vancouver Canuck. Like the rest of them are all kind of
Yeah.
like
Well,
Matt Sundin's in there, but he only played one season, half a season. Mark Messier's in there, but we don't count
yeah,
him.
he
Like,
doesn't count.
yeah,
It's definitely like Luongo's prime body of work came in Vancouver, right? Sedin's body
yes,
of work clearly came in Vancouver. But like even Burry, you could probably make the argument that he was in the Hall of Fame too because of what he did when he was in Florida. Like some of his seasons where he had like 60 points more than everyone else on the team.
that's true for sure.
Like
That's
I'd say
definitely
he was probably like a 50-50 split,
I
probably.
so I will disagree with that slightly because I think that like okay, not to rag on Florida as a franchise as if they haven't gotten enough of that already, but look, Roberto Luongo is the perfect example of a guy where like he played in Florida twice. He played there before he went to Vancouver and after. He was not the superstar that he was, despite being arguably just as good a goaltender before he came to Vancouver, until he was a Canuck. The Canuck being a Vancouver Canuck and playing in that market is what made him the legendary goalie that he was. Like, he was always going to be great. Like, he was always going to be a great goalie, but playing in Vancouver made him the star and made him a star and made him a king. And like, I feel like honestly, God, the Sedins getting in there, like, is so incredible. Like, I don't know about like, I feel like I almost want to give you the floor when it comes to the Sedins a little bit, because like, I honestly will fully admit that I didn't appreciate the Sedins enough because of how much the Canucks to me were Roberto Luongo's team, like, for the entire time that he was there. Like, even like to the point where I like look back, I'm like, God, I as much as I always knew the Sedins were amazing and incredible, but even then I feel like I never appreciated them enough for how good they were, because they were so incredible. Like what did the Sedins mean to you as a player, as a Canucks fan?
Yeah, they were all right. They're okay.
They were okay. Like,
I don't know,
God,
whatever. A bit overrated.
a bit overrated. Good
You
Lord.
know?
Yeah, like, because you didn't necessarily see them through as rookies. Like, you came in like a little bit later
No,
when they were
I came way later, right? So like,
like,
I basically started watching them like when they were kind of falling out of their prime, you know?
like they were in the 2010, 2011 era. Like, that was
Yeah.
they
So
were
like, I didn't really.
peak years.
Yeah, like, so I wasn't like really into hockey in like the late 2000s or whatever. So like, I kind of missed their pre like cup era, so to
Yeah,
speak. So
a little bit.
I
Yeah.
I mean, I was there for their final game, and let me
Yeah.
tell you, the amount of drinks I had for that send off game, and the amount of times some weirdo called security on me for being too loud will stay with me forever. And because they brought that moment to me on a very cheap ticket. I think I've told this story on here. I bought like
Yes.
15 tickets for $40 or whatever. Ended up being like the biggest value deal like of all time, possibly. And yeah, so I cherish the memory they have left me.
Yeah. Correct
And
me if I'm wrong,
also,
but wasn't Darcy Kemper in net for that game as a member of the Coyotes?
Ekman Larson and Brad Richardson were on the ice for that.
That's right. They were also there.
Yeah.
Like, God, that was a moment. Like, even like I watched that game from California, but I just remember like thinking like, not only was it just like it was the perfect that final goal was so perfect in so many ways, and it wasn't just the fact that it was Henrik to Daniel into the back of the net from Edler. It was also the fact that literally the only other Canuck out there with them was Bo Horvat, who was going to end up becoming the next captain. Like, talk about literally just the perfect storybook ending for
Like,
them.
genuinely
Like,
kind of seemed like it was fake at that point. Like,
it
especially when they get
did.
into like they scored with 2:33 remaining or whatever, 22:33 of overtime, and you're like, okay, who's making this shit up? Like, fuck
Yeah.
off.
Like,
It's fake.
it's a game 82 of a season that means absolutely that will
Yeah.
in
Didn't
nowhere.
matter at all.
Or sorry, game 81,
Game
because they
80,
did play
81, yeah.
the Edmonton game after that. But
Yeah.
like literally, how many people have said before that like it was louder in there than any playoff game, than any Olympics gold medal game. Like, it
I mean,
was
pretty
the
much that's when like Canuck fandom died and they had no reason to cheer again because they'd peaked.
I mean, God, I mean, like, yeah, it's one of those, just like, it really did have like such a Disney movie element to it, where it's like, oh, the heroes win it for the team, right? Thing.
Yeah, a little bit.
And it's so good. And like, and this, I know this will be a hot take too. I think a lot of people, like, if we have listeners that aren't Canucks fans that are cheering for other teams, I think that this is the TSN broadcast for the Hall of Fame announcing the inductions today kind of touched on it a little bit, but I'm going to go to even higher echelon here with the Sedins, where like the Sedins as the athletes that they were and the generational athletes that they were deserve to be talked about in the same way, I think, that we talk about in terms of like oddity and like a rarity in once in a lifetime, that we talk about like Bo Jackson, where it's like
Whoa, now that
how
is a hot take.
because like think about it, has there ever been a scenario in any professional sport, like major professional sport, where a pair of twins have been both equally as dominant at a sport on the same team at the same time for in any other sport? Like, will that ever happen again? I don't think it will, because
No.
it's because of how much has to go right for that to happen, right? They both
Mhm.
have to be transcendently good talents at the sport of which they play. Then someone has to pull off a ridiculous amount of insanity transactions to draft them both for the same team.
Mhm.
Like that alone makes it nearly impossible in today's like professional sports landscape. Like it can't happen in basketball, it's not gonna happen in football, it's not gonna happen in hockey again. Like
Yes.
it is something that in a way, like again, like I made like in a way we almost undervalued them for what they were, where it's like we always valued them as hockey players for how incredible they were at the sport, but in so many ways I don't think we value them for the absolute insanity of seeing a pair of identical twins play a sport as equally fantastically on the same team as they did. We will never see athletes like them again in any capacity. Like it will never happen again. They were that good, and they deserve to be talked about in the same like reverence with as guys like Bo Jackson and Deion Sanders and Michael Jordan. Like they deserve, for different reasons, but like they deserve to be in that transcendent generational sports talent that broke a sport in their own way kind of thing, like Ricky Henderson, like those guys.
I'll let
It's
you handle
incredible.
the fan replies to this take, because
Oh,
I ain't touching that with a
I'm sure
10-foot
people call
pole.
me crazy, but yeah, like I do. I think they deserve that. And I'm saying that as somebody again who, I like, and like for me today, when they were announcing the Hall of Fame, like again, we knew the Sedins were going to get in, right? Like we talked about this before the show. Like there was no doubt in, I think, either of our minds that the Sedins were going to get in on the first try. So for me today, when they announced Luongo, oh my God, I teared up. Like I admittedly teared up. I was so happy that he got in, because again, like
Because it's
I
nice to
was
see like a below average goalie finally
the
get his due. Is that
shut
why?
the fuck up. Like okay, like
A guy
this is what
who was okay
I
for like 4 years, and then
I
like that was
famously
it.
yeah, this is when the swearing comes in for me, right? God, like
He had one good year, and he didn't even get an award for it because he's
God,
just not that good.
horse
That
shit
guy.
politics. Roberto Luongo is like, again, like, what was really interesting to see about this particular draft class was how few Stanley Cups there were between them. Like Henrik Zetterberg was the only one with any, or sorry, I'm not Zetterberg. Who am I thinking of that had
Daniel
the,
Alfredson.
there was, or no one had a cup
I don't
actually.
think
Now that
anyone
I
did.
think about,
Yeah,
you're right. There were the candidates. Zetterberg was one of the candidates that was up,
yeah.
like one of the first year candidates, and he was the only one
He
with a
was probably the only
championship
one that actually deserved to be in there based on like trophy and hardware.
on but and like he only had one, and that's the thing that I think is really important, especially in like today's NHL and today, and like how the Hockey Hall of Fame should like operates going forward, is like there are going to be so many great players that never win a championship, like just because of the how the league operates and how hard it is to win, especially if they can't build around you in the salary cap era. Like look at Connor McDavid. Like Connor McDavid's halfway to that already. Like in Draisaitl, same thing. Like so for Luongo, a guy who has often been thrown under the bus as like not good enough simply because he didn't win any hardware. For me was always a massive, like, I always had such a, like, I always fought so hard for that guy on the year that he didn't win that he finished second in both the Hart Trophy voting and the Vezina Trophy voting to two different players, not even just to one guy. He lost to Martin Brodeur in the Vezina because Brodeur played on a better defensive team and got helped that way. And then he lost to Sidney Crosby in the Hart Trophy voting. And it was just like the way Roman Josi had that happen to him this year with like the Norris and the Hart as well, where he was second in both. It was such crap that he didn't, because he was so clearly the MVP of that team. And God, like he is one of the greatest goalies in NHL history, but who will never get his due simply because he never won the final game. But even then, he won an Olympic gold medal. He won a World Cup of hockey. He won 2 gold medals, actually. He went to the finals. He literally changed the Canucks forever as like a team that had never had like an incredible goaltender, like a true elite goaltender in their midst. They finally got him, and he completely changed that franchise and made the 2011 team possible. Without him, they never come close. Like, God, it was incredible to see him get his due today. And now it's literally like you're seeing every like Canucks fans like talking about him, like all the like literally the Sedins and Luongo like talking about how they feel like they're a unit as a unit, which was really sweet.
Yeah,
and then
was
like
pretty great, right? His the best line in hockey, Sedin Luongo. That's pretty cute.
He's right. It was fantastic. And like, yeah, and then like even like Francesco Aquilini like tweeting about how he congratulating all 3 of them for making it in, and it just like now it's literally okay. He's getting into the Hall of Fame. There's literally only one thing left now, and it's time. It's the money's coming up. The cap recapture's coming off the books. It's time to retire his jersey. They got to do it this year. Like they absolutely 100% have to retire Roberto Luongo's jersey this year. He's I could very easily pencil him in as the 3rd best player in franchise history. Like, it's right behind the Sedins. Like, he belongs there.
Well, the problem is Frankie doesn't forget that he let him down in Game 7. And Frankie is all about, what have you done for me lately? And do I remember you? So I could very well see him being like, he's good. He's in the Hall of Fame. That's all he should get. He went to Florida and he retired there and cost me money. Like, I could very well see him just like doing it that way. You know what I mean?
I would like I know we've definitely talked a lot about, we have our opinions on Frankie as an owner. But I really would like to believe on this particular point that he understands the gravity of Luongo's, like how much Luongo matters to this team and like to this team's history, right? Where like
I don't know, man. He's
and there was
out of touch with reality.
I mean, there was already talk that like things were being patched up when he was invited to be part of the Sedin's retirement, like jersey retirement night, like a few back in 2020, because he was there. He even got literally we got the rarity of getting to see him with his captain's jersey on, because he never got to wear it as a goalie in real games, which was really cool. Just having him there was fantastic. It's so about time that they finally patch that up, because it's the last thing left. It's so fully the last thing left. And look, I would say that the larger reason Luongo is in the Hall of Fame, going to the Hall of Fame at all, is entirely because of his time with the Canucks. So it's gotta be done. It's gotta be done now. Like, the best time to do it is tomorrow. Like, if you know what I'm saying, right? The best day to do it is the very next day you can. And man, like, that's all I can put in there. Yeah. And I know I've spent too much time on it. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, just
I'm very passionate about Luongo. Like, he's my hockey hero, man. Like, God, I'm so happy for him that he's going to the Hall of Fame. Herb Carnegie also, like, just like I don't have as much to talk about with Herbie Carnegie. I don't know how much you know about. Do you know much about Herb Carnegie as a player, Cody?
I don't read it. I don't read history on hockey, dude. I ain't got
Okay,
time for that.
so I will just like I won't talk as long on this one. This is a really good builder's pick. If the only thing being, of course, that this is like it's a posthumous induction for Herb Carnegie. He is like considered one of the like pioneers of hockey when it as a black hockey player in the 40s. Like he was the superstar of the Quebec Aces, and literally like Jean Beliveau has routine like before Jean Beliveau passed away, routinely talked about how much Herbie Carnegie meant to his career as a mentor and as a person, and like how important to him he was. And like if Jean Beliveau is talking about a guy in that fashion, like how is he not in the Hall of Fame? And it was one of those cases where it was like he never played in an NHL game, and
Right.
because of the color of his skin, and it was awful that he hadn't. And I'm really thrilled that the Hockey Hall of Fame took this year to induct him,
To recognize it anyway. Yeah.
to recognize it. Yeah, because so often guys get not get pushed aside because of their lack of NHL experience, which is why he's going in as a builder rather than as a player.
Yeah.
But like that's great. Like that's a fantastic pick for him to go in. Like he is up. He another guy like who deserves to be talked about in the same breath as a guy like Willie O'Ree or Larry Kwong or Fred Sasakamoose, like those guys who really paved the way for minorities in the sport. And God, like, yeah, like that's a guy who deserves to be in the Hall of Fame for that alone. And it's good that they're making this happen now. Like they're finally making it happen. Daniel Alfredsson getting in is a big deal. Like is good for Ottawa. Like that's a good one. I will say, like, okay, I don't want to take away from Daniel Alfredsson, but you and I were both very much on the Alexander McGillney train here.
Yeah, that's my only gripe with this thing is I don't know if I could justify Alfredsson in over McGillney, just given like what McGillney did to enter the league, like being like literally the first guy to hop over, and then in his debut, like puts up like nearly 80 goals. Like I don't know how you can. I know a lot of this is like you basically advertise yourself, like it's like the Academy Awards, like you pitch yourself for why you should be picked, but the fact that he had like no one in the league has been like, hey, this guy needs to be in, and no one's been like, oh yeah, this is long overdue. Like that's like shocking to me.
Thankfully, there's no like term limit on like, oh, once you've passed a certain amount of years of eligibility, you're no longer like eligible to win. Which baseball has that, and it's very stupid. Because it's like one of those things where like apparently in baseball there will be years where they'll only induct like 2 people just because they're like, oh, we felt no one else was deserving. It's like, shut up. There's like, shut the hell up. Like in hockey, at very least, they're like, well, we always will guarantee there will be at least this many people getting in. So there's no hopefully
he'll eventually come up. I'm assuming when it's like when the choices are Zetterberg, Rod Brindamore, and McGillney. Like I would be shocked if he didn't get picked at that point.
Yeah, like it's a McGillney. Like again, McGillney should have been in a long time. He should have been in the first year he was eligible.
Yeah,
like that. And maybe that's and like part of that might even be due to things like even here in Vancouver, like we don't talk enough much about McGillney simply in his time in Vancouver simply because the team happened to be very bad. At the time that he was here, but that was through no fault of his own for how he was really, really good as a Canuck. He and Pavel Bure are the only 2 Canucks who have ever scored more than 50 goals in a season. Like, how is that not talked about more? That he was that good as a Canuck here.
I wonder if it's because people just think of his time in Buffalo more. Maybe.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. The Buffalo throws it in, throws a thing in, and but there was things I think there was a documentary that came out a few years ago specifically talking where the all the voices of the Canucks, all the play-by-play guys like Jim Robson, Jim Hewson, and John Shorthouse were like talking with Brendan Batchelor, I think, about like their time covering the sport. And Jim Houston literally went on like a whole thing about how Alexander McGillney was like one of the best teammates and one of the best guys in the locker room for like mentoring the young guys they had, like Marcus Naslund and Todd Bertuzzi. Like he was so instrumental in helping those guys develop. But yeah, like that, like, yeah, hopefully we can get to, hopefully McGillney's got to get in there at some point.
I just don't, yeah, like the dude scored 76 goals in a season once. Like,
just ridiculous.
Like,
just insanity.
On. That alone should like we're talking like Luongo getting in off of like not one season, but like there was like a good 3-year run where like he was literally like the best, and for whatever fucking dumbass reason he just didn't get the hardware to back how good he was, like literally the top goaltender at the time. McGillney was like, when he was closing his time in Buffalo and then moved over to Vancouver, it was like, this guy is like one of the greatest like goal scorers in the league.
And he literally, and literally half the reason he just didn't end up on, like, I think half the reason is like for a lot of the same reasons as Luongo, is just that he just happened to be on teams that didn't make deep playoff runs around him.
But he won a cup with New Jersey.
He won a cup with New Jersey. And you're right. He won a cup with New Jersey in 2000. But like people but by that point, the problem was like people are like, well, he was just kind of a supporting cast. It's like, well, who cares?
Yeah.
Who cares? Look at all the goals he scored before that. Like, come on.
Well, that's the problem with like having Hall of Fame in general, right? Because you have like Dave Andrewchuk or whoever the fuck it was. Like guys that were like,
Andrewchuk in? Did he get in?
I can't remember. It's a guy's name that gets brought up all the time. I thought it was Dave Andrewchuk.
It might be. I
just know someone got. I know there's one guy, not last year.
Was a guy who took forever to get in as well.
Yeah, I just know some guy like got brought in like a couple years ago.
Kevin Lowe. Lowe.
Dave. Oh god, yeah. Dave Andrewchuk got put in 2017, 2018 as part of the Hockey Hall of Fame cast, and it's like, yeah, he's good, but like the Hall is about like, I mean, to me, the Hall of Fame is supposed to be like, these were guys who were at their peak, the best in hockey. It's a little early to say, but Cale Makar probably going to be in the Hockey Hall of Fame for what he's accomplished before hitting 25.
Oh God, he could retire tomorrow and he'd be in the Hall of Fame. Like, yeah,
like it's like that's kind of like stuff you reward. You don't reward guys who like just played the game a long time. Like, Patrick Marleau, for example, like people are talking about like putting him in because he played over 1,000 games, even though he has no hardware. It's like,
well, Patrick Marleau, I think definitely. Well, Patrick Marleau, I think, is a guy like, so I do think that there is. I think that like there is also room for players going in for an induction if they mean something specific to a point in time in the game. If you know what I'm saying, like they're an important like a crossroad for usually like in particular for a team or something. Like Patrick Marleau is like, you can't tell the San Jose Sharks franchise story without Patrick Marleau, right? Like in the same way, like
I suppose, but in the grand scheme of the league, Patrick Marleau, you were never like he's the like a top 5 forward in the league. He's just,
right, like
he's just good.
He was just really good. He was never like the superstar. Like he was always like, even on his own team, like Joe Thornton was always the better player, like for a long time, right? But it's like one of those, like, it's like I do have time for like, okay, if a guy gets in, but like Andrewchuk is a weird one because it's like I don't remember it being like the guy for any team that he was on. He was just always one of the players. Like
he was just a guy who happened to play for a really long time and put up at least 50 points for quite a long time, which is good. It's just like, I don't know. The Hall of Fame for me should be like for the McGillneys, the Sedins, like the Ovechkins eventually, like those type like generational talents or guys who transcend the game or transform the game in such a way that it is different with them having played it.
Yeah. And like one of the guys that we were talking about yesterday, I think when we were talking about like the candidates there, like you I think weren't as high on Rick Nash as one of those guys, particularly because he didn't score as many, like, I think it was like, for many points, this sort of thing, right? Like, he was never like, he never ended up being particularly at the number 1 overall pick that he was supposed to be, but also like in his case, right? If he wasn't as good for the Columbus Blue Jackets in all the years that he was there, that team probably would have relocated by now, right? Like that team might
Maybe.
not be here today if Rick Nash wasn't
I
as big for them
hmm.
as he was, right? Like
I
that's
guess
why
so. It's just I don't know if I'd put him in just because I don't know. Rick Nash to me was never like the greatest player in the league at any point. I just thought he
no,
carried a shit franchise, you know?
he carried a shit franchise, and that's why, and that like, and you're right, like that. In a way, there almost needs to be another category for like players where it's like maybe they weren't necessarily the highest scoring guys, but they're getting in because they meant something to a crucial point in a team or in the sports history for some reason, right? Like they have
Mhm.
an ulterior reason for being there. In the same way that like McGillney deserves to be there at the very least for being the first player to defect from the USSR
Yeah. Like
just to play games in North America. Like that
you could
alone.
you could legitimately make an argument that McGillney should be in there first as a builder than before like a player. Like that's just like his
he should,
importance.
like if he had just done that, played one season and scored like 5 points, he still probably would deserve to be in there just for that. Like that's because that's such a crucial moment in like world and hockey history for him to do that. Like that
Yeah.
matters because that opened the door for other Russian players to come in and play. We spent way longer on Hall of Fame stuff than we meant to. Maybe we just need to make a CreaseCast Hall of Fame for players we like. Yeah.
Apparently we have some thoughts on this whole Hall of Fame business. Which is true.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that happens with anyone. Like, as soon as you bring up like any player, like I'm sure my dad would have a different opinion on McGillney or Luongo, right? Like, it's just like it's a generational thing. Like, some guy might look at Luongo and be like, "Oh, he played weird. He didn't play like the goalies that used to play when I was a kid." It's like, oh,
Right.
well, that doesn't count, but okay. But that's like the way it goes.
Yeah, he was no Bob Essenza. Like,
have I told you about Ken Dryden? Have you heard of him?
Ken Dryden is God, Ken Dryden. Yeah, like, oh God, like I'm trying to think who's the most random goaltender I can think of from that time is like, God, it's like Rick Tabaracci. Like, there you go. Yeah, there you go. Like any goalie who played for the Winnipeg Jets in like the mid to late 80s, early 90s, like that's a goalie.
Even those goalies don't even remember that they played goalie for the Winnipeg Jets in the 80s.
God, do you remember who, like, God, like, talk about to bring it full circle, do you remember who the two goalies were for the Avalanche when they relocated from Quebec before Patrick Waugh showed up?
I feel like we were talking about this the other day.
Yeah.
Shit.
I
cannot remember.
It was a tandem of Jocelyn Thibault and Stéphane Facette. Like that was their run. That was their tandem. That
now
actually
that's a tandem.
That is a 90s ass tandem. Like that actually got them first place in the East that in that 95 shortened season, and then they got Waugh and got even better.
Good for them.
Good for them. Not so good for Quebec. Whoops.
Not so good for them, but you can't win them all.
Yeah, you can't win. You can't win any of them, apparently.
Well, good.
What a bummer to end on. Oh God. Quick less bummer to end on. The Canucks the Canucks were
the Canucks did a bunch of stuff. Most of the time,
Bear's agent reached out to the Canucks. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's good. Not good. They hired Dale Talon.
Yeah. Well, thank God he's just based out of Florida, and he won't.
We'll probably have more to talk about everything they did on Monday, but obviously Hall of Fame talk and Cup final took precedence. Nobody really wants to hear about Sheldon Dries' 2-year extension. Like, who gives a shit? Breezeball's back, baby. Everybody's favorite prospect.
It's Breezeball season.
Yeah, I have a feeling. The draft is coming up in 9 days. The deadline to file for arbitration is on July 2nd. So Canucks are probably going to have like a fuckload of news in this next week alone.
It is going to be a massive couple weeks for the Vancouver Canucks. Like, and I say that as someone who has no intel on that. You can just tell it's coming. There's going to be so much there's going to be crucial changes coming to the team over the next couple weeks, I think.
Yeah, and the fact that they've kind of slow rolled their news, like they announced a bunch of head office changes one day, and then literally the following Monday they announced 3 different signings, plus news comes out that a bunch of people aren't getting re-signed for next year. So they're like, the wheels are turning on them getting set for next year. And so I'm sure as we approach the draft, shit is going to hit the fan quite considerably. But otherwise, folks, until that shit hits the proverbial fan, I have been Cody Sievertson, and you can follow my work at Cody Sievertson on Twitter, and you'll find my work at CanucksArmy.com. I spent most of today writing up the defenseman and goalie report cards. I hope my employer doesn't listen to this, but yeah, it's amazing what you can do with text-to-speech these days. Lachlan, where can they find your work?
You can find my work also at Canucks Army. I wrote an article today talking about how the Canucks, how Ethan Bear's agent engaged with the Canucks for a little bit in some initial talks with since the Carolina Hurricanes are giving him a chance to talk to some new teams about a potential trade partner for him or as well. And I'm also going to be working on an article that you already basically got a bit of the gist of today, where talking about how Roberto Luongo is going to the Hall of Fame, and it's time to get him to it's time for the jersey retirement to follow in Vancouver. And you can follow me on Twitter at Lach and Cody. I think I'm at 950 followers. Let's see if we can get to 1,000 before
those are rookie numbers.
Before we end season 3. Yeah, not all of us are as popular as you, Cody. We're not all A-listers like you. Jamie's not here. I don't remember her.
I think it's
Jamie
handles. Kalo _
Yeah, and then Jamie Eats or
Jamie Kalo Eats, I believe.
Jamie Kalo Eats as well. IG. And we may or may not have on the next show, by the time we do the next show when Jamie is here, we may or may not have some. She may or may not have some interesting stories to tell us about in relation to some of the stuff. One of the topics we talked about today. So we'll see about that. We'll see what happens when we come back next Monday.
Yeah, until then, folks, we'll catch you on the next episode. Bye, everybody.
Bye.